Hey guys, Zargus here with another video for Warhammer Online, Return of Reckoning, the Age of Reckoning private server. This is the second part in a series on all the classes in Warhammer, all the archetypes, melee, ranged DPS, tanks, and healers. I've done the first one on the Order ranged DPS. This is going to be the second one on the Destruction ranged DPS. So let's start it off with the Dark Elves and ranged DPS, and their one is the Sorceress. So the Sorcerer is their magical damage dealer. They do corporeal spirit damage as opposed to physical damage. They have cloth armor and they wield two-handed staff weapons. Their strengths, they are very, very good at single target damage, extremely good at AoE damage. They have a lot of instant cast spells, and they have a decent amount of utility for their group in terms of like a reduction in damage morale and an increased crit damage and damage for their party with their tactics. Their weaknesses are they are very low survivability. That light armor, that low health will make you an easy target. The low toughness, the low defenses. You are not, like, you deal self damage. You can deal 750 hits to yourself, which will devastate your health pool. And if you play a male sorcerer like I do, you are not very lore friendly, and you're going to have people coming up to you telling you, do you know that Malekith said that there can't be any males? And you'll hear the whole story over and over and over again, and that's part of playing a sorcerer. What are their class mechanic? Dark magic. So dark magic is the mirror to combustion, the bright wizard tool and career ability. Basically, as you cast spells, you're going to build up this dark magic up from 1 to 100. As it gets closer to 100, your critical damage and your crit is going to increase up to 35% for your crit, 100% for your critical damage, making your spells obviously do way, way, way more. But as it goes up higher, you're going to start dealing more self-damage to yourself, up to 750, 35% of the time when you cast a spell. That can add up very, very quick, especially when your health pool is low. What are their specializations? Sorcerer has the Path of Agony, which is your single target kind of burst line, focuses on instant spells and high hitting single target spells. You have your Calamity line, that is your delayed damage and dot line, putting a dot to heal yourself, or a dot that will tick down after 5 seconds and explode on your target like a bomb and do massive damage. Then you have your Destruction line, which is your AoE line. This is where you're going to be getting up close and personal, doing damage all around yourself. High risk, but high reward, because you can do devastating damage to an entire group of people. What are the class-defining abilities of the Sorcerers? Impending Doom. This is a big, just blast the target, instant cast that will really rock their HP. Doesn't require any build-up. Can be used on the move. Very strong ability. Word of Pain. So this is where you put a delayed damage ability on the target. 5 seconds will tick down, and then once that dot ticks, they'll get a massive damage hit. Allows you to kind of build up your damage in time. Throw on a Word of Pain, start building up a Doom Bolt, and time them together so that at 1 second, the person takes 5,000 to 6,000 damage, and there's no way you can heal through that. You can surprise the healers. Finally, they get Disastrous Cascade, which will deal explosions around the Sorceress multiple times as a channel, dealing damage to everyone nearby in 30 feet. So what kind of play are you going to do with a Sorceress or Sorcerer? You're going to be doing solo play, so you're going to be playing by yourself with a healer, maybe a duo play, I should say, with a healer. You're going to be doing scenarios. You're going to be great in warbands for cities or for defending or attacking fortresses. Where do they not play very well? Probably ranked play, 6v6 play. You're going to be an easy target, and it is a melee meta right now, and you want to make sure that you're playing a melee in the melee meta. If you played a mage or any kind of wizard in any kind of other game, you'll probably know how to play this class. It's a magical damage dealer, very true to the archetype. All right, now that we've gone through the elf, let's move on to the next one. I think let's check out the Magus. So we're going to go to the human or the chaos champion next. This is theirs, the Magus. They are one of the cooler looking ranged DPS in the game. Very, very strong, very, very underrated. So let's go right into them right now. So they are another magical damage dealer. Order is a little bit different. Order gets 2 physical damage dealers and 1 magical damage dealer. Destro is the opposite. They get 2 magic and 1 physical damage dealer. Magus is the second one. They again wear cloth armor, but they have an armor buff, just like the engineer, so that they can double it to almost having medium type armor. They also use two-handed staff-type weapons as their main source of, their main weapon, pretty much it. What are their strengths? Very high survivability between self-buffs that give them health, like Agates of Orange Fire, between their armor buff, between putting out a pet that will increase their dodge, disrupt. They can be very, very hard to kill. A defensive Magus can pretty much beat any other class in the game 1v1, maybe except for a DPS Archmage. Very, very powerful survivability. They have a huge toolkit of crowd control. Magus get a snare, they get a root, they get a disarm, they get a knockback, they get a silence, they get a stun, they get a stagger. They really have a massive amount of CC that they can put out in a fight. They get their electromagnet rift, like their chaotic rift. They have a lot of crowd control. They have the longest range in the game, tied with the engineer. Most abilities have 150 feet. Some even have 180 feet. Super long range. They can blast you from way, way across the battlefield, where sometimes you can't even see them coming and you are down. Pro, you ride on a pretty cool looking disc, and you're one of the coolest looking casters I've seen in the game. What are the weaknesses of the Magus? Similar to the engineer, you are very immobile. You kind of have to plant yourself in one spot, build up your damage, put out your pets to start building your damage, and racking up your self buffs to be able to kill people. Great if you're defending a fort, defending an objective, but if the fight is on the move, then you're kind of getting left behind. You can resummon it, but it takes time, and you're not the best mobile damage dealer. Your pets die quickly. You summon your demons, and they can go down very fast with focus, and when you're relying on that for self buffs, if you're not placing it in the right spot or choosing your positions very well, you can feel like you're just never really getting that pet out there. You're never coming off the disc. Another downside, while the disc is pretty cool, you're on it forever. So if you're like me and that gives you some kind of weird sense of claustrophobia, then that might not be the class for you. What is the class mechanic? They summon different types of demons to help them in combat. So they can summon like a flamer that will increase their AoE dots and their AoE damage. They can summon a blue horror that will increase their dodge disrupt and increase their defensive nature of themselves and do AoE to targets. They can summon a Nurgle pet that will explode and stagger enemies, mesmerize them for 5 seconds. So they're all about summoning these demons to help them in combat, kind of like a pet class. What are their specializations? Havoc. Havoc is their long-range, single-target damage line. This is where you can get things that will blast someone from 150, 180 feet away, deal undefendable damage. You'll get a disarm. You'll get single-target abilities. Very, very strong, very high killing power. Changing. Changing is their middle tree. It's their mid-range kind of dot AoE spec. So this is where you're going to be kind of at medium range, mid-range, tossing out dots onto AoE targets, putting out puddles on the ground, doing AoE with that. That's what the mid-tree is all about. Dots and area of effect. Finally, you have the path of Demonology, which is going to be your utility line. This is where you're going to get things like Agates of Orange Fire to buff your health. This is where you're going to get your Chaotic Rift to pull enemies towards you and lock them in, and also get a few kind of close-range area of effect abilities. Class-defining abilities on the Magus, Bolt of Change. This is the one we talked about, 180 feet long, undefendable, massive bolt that you can build up from a distance, can hit your target and take away a third of their HP or more, time it up with a few other abilities, and you can one-shot people from a massive distance away and out of detaunt range so they can't even mitigate the damage. Dissolving Mist, similar to Napalm on the Engineer, you're putting down this puddle on the ground targeted AoE. Anyone who walks through it is going to take damage, going to deal massive damage to people in a room somewhere. If you're at a fort or you're at a city, putting in the right spot can get you quite a few kills and quite a lot of renown at that. Finally, you have your Chaotic Rift. This is your in your Demonology line. This is where you're going to pull in 6 to 9 targets to the Magus, snaring them at the same time, getting them ready for the Choppas and the Sorcerers around you to burst them down, and even for you to burst them down. So very strong ability. Taking people out of their position in the world with any kind of pull is always very, very strong, and Magus has a great one. What kinds of play the Magus is going to do? Very good at being solo, very good at doing scenarios, and actually pretty good in a warband too. Where they fall behind is 6v6 and ranked play. Melee meta again, not very good for Magus. But you know what? The right Magus with the right build and the right team, maybe could surprise you. And finally, we got one more with the last of the ranged DPS on destruction side, the green skin ranged DPS, the Squid Herder. So, what is the Squid Herder? Squid Herder is destruction's ranged physical damage dealer, similar to an engineer or a shadow warrior. They also have a very good melee damage spec in their melee squig mode. They wear light armor, but with their squig, they can even get up to medium/high. Their weapons are a spear, a one-handed spear, and a bow. What are their strengths? Squid Herder is very mobile. Not as mobile as the Shadow Warrior, but still has a lot of abilities that can be used on the run. Their pet can damage people on the run, so they can kite you across the battlefield, run away, self-knockback, snare on the move, go into their squig armor, knock the person back. Don't have a knockdown like the Shadow Warrior, but they are a very mobile class. They had one of the best heal debuffs in the game in their range spec. It's spammable, there's no cooldown. Heal debuffs lower healing by 50% output, and they get one of the best ones, so that is super necessary in a lot of fights and will lead to a lot more kills than a regular damage would. Their melee spec is fantastic. Their squig armor, they pop inside a giant squig, they run around. It is a very solid spec. Great AoE damage, pretty decent single target, but also they get a ton of utility, a ton of survivability. Their melee mode is very, very good. And the last benefit is if you are someone who likes to drink the tears of your enemies, Order is very unhappy with the power of the melee Squid Herder. So if that appeals to you, if you wanna see those tears, then Squid Herder is a great class for you. What are their weaknesses? Their range specs are strong, but they are kind of average too. They don't really stand out from all the other range classes in the game in a way. Like, they don't have the most damage. They don't have the most burst. They don't even have the most utility or the most kiting potential or AoE. So they kind of fit in this mid-range where they're good, but not the best. They're kind of a jack of all trades. Very gear dependent. If you're not geared on a melee Squid Herder or a ranged squigger, you're going to think the class really falls apart. Once you start getting up there in gear and your renown rank, you'll see the class really comes into its own, but it is a road to get there, and some people don't want to travel down that road. The melee build is, in my opinion, a lot stronger than the range build right now, and for someone who wants to play a range class, that might seem a little bit unappealing. You're like, I want to be a bow user, I don't really want to be a melee, and that could be disappointing. And the other downside is that when you're in your squig mode, you can't see armor, and some people don't want to be running around as a giant meatball all day long. What is the class mechanic? Squigs. You summon different squig pets that have different abilities, like the horn squig or the spike squig. Some of them will be better at dealing range damage. Some of them will be better, like the spike squig or the horn squig, at doing melee damage. They'll give you different buffs, and also they'll have different abilities depending on the squig that you summon. You can explode these to do AoE damage. You can eat them to get back some health. So you're all about summoning those pets and dealing damage from ranged. What are their specializations? Big shooting. Big shooting is their single target damage line. This is where you'll get an equivalent to Festering Arrow on the Shadow Warrior. Your Poison Arrow, a long second cast that will deal massive damage, cannot be mitigated at all with the right tactics set up. You're going to be plinking them with arrows, glass, shrapnel arrows, things like that. This is your static, typical bow hunter type spec. Then you get your bouncing line, the Path of Bouncing. That is your melee mode. This is where you go into a giant squig, and now you'll be doing AoE damage, single target damage in melee range. Your armor is buffed, your health and strength and wounds are buffed, and now you've turned from a range class to a melee class. Then you have your Path of Quick Shooting. This is your on-the-move bow strike. Your auto attacks will be able to be used on the run. You're going to be doing dot damage. Your cast can be fired on the run. You're going to be, snaring, you're going to be heal debuffing, you're going to be shooting on the move. This is your mobile spec. What are the classifying abilities? Finish them off. This is where, if it's your execute type ability, when the person is below 30% health, it'll do massive damage to them and hopefully confirm the kill. It's instant cast, pretty strong ability. Indigestion, this is a melee spec ability where you will vomit on your enemies and increase their cooldowns, which is devastating for healers when they are trying to spam their heals. Very strong. And finally, you'll have your Rotten Arrow. This is the heal debuff we talked about earlier. You're going to reduce healing on the target by 50% for 10 seconds. Can be used multiple times, super strong. There's a lot you can do in this game to lock down healers, but reducing their heals by 50% is probably one of the worst things you could do to them. Very good at getting kills. What is the type of play that a Squid Herder can do? They are great solo. They are very, very good in warbands, in their melee spec, very good in rank play in their melee spec. So with the right kind of play, they can be good at everything. So I think this is the first one we've gone over that actually has a spot in every type of play in the game. So that should be about it for the Destruction Ranged DPS classes. To highlight, we have the Magus, we have the Sorcerer, and we have the Squid Herder. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe. I'm going to be doing my next one soon, probably tomorrow, on the melee classes in the game. So stay tuned for that. Feel free to come find me on Twitch, and thanks for watching. Thanks, guys.